I mean, Helldivers, just to be clear, Helldivers is an awesome game. It's probably my favorite game right now and one of my favorite games of all time. And the developers have done some really ambitious and creative things with the game. It takes a lot of courage and daring to tie so much of the game's development to story beats that require mass participation. Because the risk of that is if people don't do them, if a critical mass of people don't do that and don't participate, then the people who get alienated and frustrating are the people who are doing the story beats, who are the people who are most into your game and its community. So you're taking a huge dice roll of alienating your base, hoping that the dynamic you'll create will reward and encourage social playing and a sense of solidarity and community and shared risk and reward. I really appreciate them for taking a step like that and not making the game just kind of an atomized individual experience. The gameplay and the game loop is really fun. It would be nice to have new missions and new biomes, but the game loop is so repeatable. And even though it is the same missions and the same enemies, every mission does have its own little special spice. And even if you've been playing as much as I have and are very high rank in it, it doesn't exactly get old. Still super fun. But people spent 3 months on that DSS working for it. The major orders threatened to repeatedly to undo the progress people had worked for, so they were really exploiting sunken cost or people's sense of sunken cost to keep engagement up for 3 months, to the point where I think a lot of people, myself, were getting really tired of it just going on and constantly feeling like the prior 8 weeks, the prior 10 weeks, whatever of work could just disappear. And because it took so long, I'll just speak for myself. Their design really created an expectation that all of that effort would lead to something pretty cool. A lot of people, if you look at Helldivers media, expected to be able to go into the space station. And it's nice to have something new, but I think it's really counterproductive for gamers in this community to have such a low bar that after all of that, we just passively accept and celebrate that what we got was them just reusing a graphic asset that's already in the game. That space station asset is already there. It's been there since day one. So now we can visually see something that's already been there. And then essentially 3 passive things, one of which sabotages the missions and punishes you from going to the planet that the space station is stationed on. And again, I can already hear Helldivers players, apologists saying, well, if you don't want to deal with the bombardment, don't go to that planet. But it's really counterproductive. That would, if you're saying that, knock it off. Because the people most likely to use the space station are the people voting and the people that put effort into trying to get it. And the whole point of the voting mechanism in the space station is to keep up the community spirit and keep engaging in the role play of the galactic war, because we're choosing strategically which planet to liberate. And so saying, well, just don't care about it, sort of defeats the purpose of the whole thing. So what the devs did was they reused an asset and then coded in 3 passive abilities. And one of them actively kills you at random. And that passive is also supposed to come with a higher liberation percentage or a liberation boost, which is unspecified. But here's the thing. Liberation rate points that Helldivers get for completing missions is also tied to the amount of deaths that were taken. So if you're getting a boost in liberation points, but it's also killing you, it's also subtracting liberation points. And without them releasing the numbers, who knows? What's the ratio there? Is it washing out? Is it actually a liberation penalty? What's the bonus? They had 3 months from the announcement of this thing to do something substantial. These aren't even stratagems you can use at will. They're just passive things that happen in the game. And if it took 3 months, they've got a staff of around 100 people. If it took 3 months for them to do this, after this game was a breakout hit, it's one of the highest selling games of the year, and they budgeted for this to be like a small cult game like the first Helldivers. They have all that money, they have 100 staff members, and they had 3 months, and what they coded in was a few passives, and they are using an existing graphic asset. It's pathetic for a live service game that encourages you to keep spending on it, and we deserve more than this horseshit space station. Not only that, but after 3 months of work, the abilities aren't even set. They're not even locked in. Helldivers have to donate on a daily basis to the space station to even get the passives. It's pretty sad. Don't get me wrong, Big Papa. I'm not saying that the other two passives aren't good or that the artillery barrage isn't kind of fun in its way. But I am saying that 3 months, all those major orders, tens of thousands of hours that people put into doing the space station, all of the goodwill that they created around it, for it to be a couple of passives and a graphic asset that was already in the game, I think we, as Helldivers, we are better served by saying to developers, we expect more than that. If they see that we're satisfied with every few months they do something like this, and it's marketed as a live service game with an ongoing campaign, then we're encouraging them to take the money and not invest enough back into the game. How many labor hours does it really take to code these passives in? I don't pretend to know a lot about programming, but they're coding in passives related to abilities that are already in the game. There's already all of the coding for barrages. So how much did they actually develop? And compare that to the long wait and the effort and the threats that it wouldn't even happen if we didn't do enough. I don't know. I think it should have been more. I think we should be able to go into the space station. I think there should be some new biomes. And I think at the very least, some of these things should be stratagems. And I don't think we should have to donate on a daily basis. This is also their solution to the resource backlog, because all the rewards, the reward caps are so small that you cap out on rewards with nothing to spend them on. And their solution is to make you pay daily for abilities that everyone already worked to get. People were expecting there to be more complicated votes. They were expecting that maybe the way they deal with the resource caps, the reward caps, would be that you could buy different cosmetics or modify your cosmetics. And they've known that people wanted that the whole time. And those systems exist in their competitor games. They're pretty common in games in the 2020s. And they haven't done any of that stuff. That was definitely the feels, Big Papa. I got bombed at an evacuation mission, just sitting at the terminal releasing the civilians from the bunker. I was just sitting there waiting and hitting the thing, and then just randomly I exploded. Part of it is like that sort of silly, cartoonish feel of Helldivers. The bombardment's sort of fun as far as that goes. But I think it would work a little bit better if it wasn't constant. I think it would work a little bit better if it was more random zones that were marked on the map. So there's just a death zone. And if you go into the death zone, then you're in for the treat of this unending barrage. Maybe that kind of rotates or something. But for every time where it was funny to get randomly blown up, there were times where you had fought to do something critical, then it would blow you up. It wasn't fun to fight into complexes and deal with drops and have the sense of victory of fighting through all that and then get blown up and have the fight reset. It does seem to be that way, but I tried some solo. I think you're right. It does seem like it rotates around the host. I did some solo hell dives on level 10, and if I walked, I got a suggestion from one of the community members in the chat, and she had suggested walking. So when I walked, it was clear it was kind of rotating around me. But the problem with it going around the host too was if I sprinted or I used my jetpack, there was a really good chance it would blow me up even though I was the host. As it goes right now, as the host, it will kill the host too. It will kill the host if you sprint. It moves, that circle moves pretty slow. And there were a couple times where even walking, it landed close enough to me to knock me back, which is potentially a fatal game mechanic. It shot me back pretty hard a couple of times. And then in some of the games I randomly dropped into, I agree. I always find this kind of weirdly, this is frustrating about the game. In a lot of ways, this is legitimately one of the best games I've ever played. The game design is super creative while being super simple. The game mechanics, the graphics, the game loop is incredibly fun. The fact that they encourage there to be a community by creating collective goals, that's amazing. It's brave. But it also has some of the worst sort of decision making in some elements. And it's frustrating to have that mix of really terrible design with really good design. And I think one of the things I hope that we as Helldivers are able to do more is kind of what you just did in chat, which is it's okay to demand more from the game just because it's really good. Because I do see a lot of people that will just endlessly defend whatever it is, especially since the 60-day plan is concluded, where they did legitimately, and they deserve credit, they did fix the game. But I think what people need to do is exactly what you do. I think we just need to say stuff we want, and we need to be really clear that we want it, and we need to stop making apologies for them. If they want an active gaming community, which they clearly do, and they want people to continue playing this game for a few years, which they clearly do, we just need to say stuff like, I want to be able to walk around Super Earth, and have the rest of us say, I want that too. Instead of saying stuff like, well, what do you expect from them? They work so hard on the 60-day patch. We just need to say stuff we want. So I want to be able to walk around Super Earth. I agree. I want to be able to go into the space station. I want them to have a clearer explanation of how the orbital bombardment works at least. I'd rather have them be stratagems than passives. I don't want to have to pay daily out of mission rewards to use the space station abilities after I personally participated in every single major order for the space station. And I don't want to have to continually dump resources into it. I want to spend my resources on weapons upgrades. I want to spend them on cosmetics. I want to be able to change the color of my uniform. I want to spend my resources, since I'm high level, on fun things that customize my character. And by the way, I also think it's really time for them to introduce new missions and new biomes. How about that as a missed opportunity? They invented this cool storyline about the bug zoo, and it was really obvious that it was such fun, clever writing. The naivete of the super patriotism of the Super Earth Command, right? They'd have this amazing bug zoo. It was clearly set up to be this awesome sci-fi disaster. They didn't do anything gameplay or graphically with that. Just for a week or something, having missions where we're in complexes, there's multiple bug complexes, and they start breaking out of their pins. They could have done a lot of stuff. Maybe because it's safe, you don't actually spawn in with stratagems, and you've got to move across the map with bugs breaking out of electric fences and slowly collect the ability to choose one stratagem at a time. Whatever, they could have done a million things. But they should have done more with some of this stuff. And I agree, the space station bathrooms are probably nice, but we'll never get to see them. And let's be honest about the 60-day patch too. Almost all of that was them tweaking damage values. I'm glad they started testing, right? I'm glad they started a test group instead of just releasing untested patches, because that was clearly messing up the game. But we shouldn't let them get away with going into the damage tables and tweaking numbers and saying that was like, oh my gosh, it took a staff of 100 people. We broke our backs trying to meet the 60-day deadline. Especially since a lot of the damage table changes were just reversions back to many of the weapons' original states. Does it really take 60 days to open up the game's code and switch number 45 to the number 55? They really went out of their way to make it look like it was some Herculean task to do the 60-day plan, when almost all of it was just damage table changes. Very necessary ones, and ones I'm very grateful for, but what are they doing with content, and how effective they are at convincing Helldivers to be really grateful for almost nothing other than a really awesome base game, which is why people are willing to look the other way for around this stuff so many times. Think about it like this. This is sort of a mistake I thought they were really making. If this is what the Democracy Space Station is, and they had made this take 1 month to do, and keep in mind, it's not like they needed 3 months to build it. If they had just made it a month-long project to get this, it would have felt way cooler, I think, for most people. But because it was major order after major order, and it took 3 months, and all throughout the sequence of major orders, they kept threatening, oh, if you don't play the game how we tell you to play it instead of how you want to play it, then you'll lose all your progress. So they really exploited a sense of sunken cost. I think they set themselves up for people to be disappointed that it's only this. If they had done this after a month, I think it would be very easy for most people to be like, this is fucking amazing. This is so cool. They made it take too long. I don't know if I'm John Helldiver. That guy's pretty good. I'm okay at Helldivers. If you're still hanging around, thank you all for joining me. I hope you have a good rest of your day or evening wherever you are in the world. I am Void Corporeal, part-time college professor, full-time loser, and I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.